Well, first, let me welcome you to Radio Gag. We have
Thank you.
Sandy and Lonnie Phillips from Survivors Empowered. We'd love for our listeners to know more about your organization.
Well, our organization started several years ago. We had been affected by Jesse's death, of course, back in 2012. And she was killed at the Aurora Theater massacre at the Batman movie premiere. And along with 11 others and 70 wounded. It was big news at the time. And 5 months later, Sandy Hook happened. And we responded to Sandy Hook as just wanting to help them in any way we could. And seeing the shock and the devastation on the parents' faces, I knew immediately that this is what we needed to be doing for the rest of our lives. We know what that felt like. We remembered, and seeing them reminded us of we looked just like that 5 months ago. So what can we do to help these people? And the organization just kind of grew from that desire to help others navigate through those first shocking waves of grief and devastation, and then on into finding a way for these people to find hope and deal with their grief and find solutions to the PTSD that most survivors suffer from, and depression and anxiety. So our organization has continued to morph from not only responding, but now providing resources to survivors and making sure that they have the ability to tap into mindfulness classes, to tap into a new, in fact, it's going live next week. We partnered with Giffords and developed a toolkit for survivors who want to know what do I do next? What happens now? Where do I go? What services are there? How do I find a trauma therapist versus a grief therapist? Not knowing where to turn is really the first thing that happens. We were in Texas. Jesse was killed in Colorado. And we were sitting there going, well, what do we do? Do we get on an airplane? Do they call us? Do we really know, in fact, that she's dead, even though we've been told she was? All those questions just, whirl around you and make the situation even harder to deal with.
So what we found out, I think that covered a lot of ground, but after the Aurora shooting, Sandy and I were really surprised that we didn't have the laws we thought we had. We weren't up on it. We were gun owners, we were Republicans from Texas. So, and we weren't really very particularly what you would say politicals, or people that were interested in politics. But after the 5 months after our shooting happened, we tried to get anyone to talk to us about it. I mean, that was during the President Obama, and that's when they were having the presidential debates, and they wouldn't even bring up gun control. So we were shocked that we couldn't just go out and get this law changed where somebody could go buy an AR-15 out of the trunk of a car legally. That was just beyond us. So right away, we were going to get that changed. We were going to go to Congress and we were going to raise hell and we were going to get that changed. Well, 10 years later, we have had no federal regulations. So that was kind of, when Sandy Hook happened, we said, well, they wouldn't listen to us, but they're really going to listen to, after 20 babies were killed, we're going to get this changed. We were shocked. We were sitting in the gallery when the vote was 54 to 46. And we found out that because of the filibuster rule, which I never heard of before, wouldn't allow that change. And that's the reason we can't get change, is because we have been blocked by a Republican Congress in control. And I'm saying, we voted Republicans. We
don't anymore.
After Sandy Hook, and after that vote came down, we don't vote Republican. So that's where we are politically, personally, but as an organization, we are bipartisan. We help Republicans and Democrats alike, equal.
Well, I think that's the point is that you're trying to make is that we have to touch everyone from the bottom up. And I want to hear more about these toolkits and your tour.
Well, the meeting people where they're at is so important. As gun owners, we always, whenever we're having a conversation with someone, it starts off, well, we're gun owners too. I took the NRA class when I was 10 years old, and it was a very different organization back then. Most people don't even know how the NRA has morphed into this political machine that does not have people's best interest. They're just concerned about their bottom line. We've also discovered that people in their own states don't realize that laws are different from state to state. And they always throw up, well, Illinois has strict gun laws, but look at Chicago. Well, yeah, they're trafficking guns across the border from Indiana and other states that have either zero gun laws or very loose gun laws. So the need for national laws just keeps coming back, because until you make the strongest case for common sense gun laws in states like California, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, until every other state is honoring gun ownership in the same way, then you're weakening all gun laws. It's just a vicious cycle.
What actually inspired you to actually travel then?
Well, it's backstory here. After Jesse's death, we knew that there was going to be a trial. And we started asking questions, how long is this going to take? And everyone was telling us it would be about 3 years before we had a trial. So for me, it was incredibly important that I was in that courtroom every day, representing not only our daughter Jessie, but for those who couldn't be in attendance every day of the trial. We were going to represent the survivors and the survivor families of those who were killed. So we rented out our house and we bought a camper and we took off for Denver. And we were lucky enough to find a driveway we could park on. And it was literally 5 minutes from the courthouse. And after the trial was over, which took almost 4 months.
Yeah, 4.5 months.
4.5 months. When the trial was over, we just kind of looked at each other and said, I kind of like this style of living, small living. And this gives us the ability to work with the survivors and the wounded in America and meet them face to face. One of the things that we realized when we were going through the trial, when the wounded were there to speak and to tell their stories and to get to know them on a very personal level, one-on-one, our hearts just really went out to the wounded in America. And for every one that is killed in America, there are 2 that are wounded and survive, but nobody thinks about them ever again. It's like, well, in our case, 70 were wounded. Oh, well, whatever happened to them? Well, we know what happens to them and we know their struggles. And sometimes it's not just physical struggles, it's emotional struggle and it's financial struggle. So they're being ignored in America. So our fight is not just because we had a daughter taken by gun violence. Our fight is because there are so many people living in our country who have been affected by this that nobody sees. They've become invisible. So part of this, after living on the road for 7 years now, part of this tour being that it's 2022, we're going to 20 states and 22 cities. It'll be more than that by the time we finish, but that's what's on the books. And our job is to connect with the grassroots organizations in those cities and states and work with them to find out exactly what it is they're doing, what their struggles are, who they work with as far as survivors and the wounded, and then help them to connect with other state organizations and to start forming a very loose knit, but to start forming a coalition. So if I'm working on something in California and so might be working on something in, let's say, Wisconsin, we've put them together, we've networked for them, and they now know each other and they can have those calls personally and say, hey, we just did this. Would you be interested in developing that same kind of program in Wisconsin or Louisiana or Maine? And so we're growing our voices by doing that. And we got very tired of speaking to the choir, as they say. You know, people in the gun violence prevention movement, we all know each other in some way or another, and we are all willing to work with each other. But getting lawyers, DAs, doctors, nurses, teachers, getting them involved in the conversation and having them listen to what the reality in their state is, and then the reality on a national level, what that reality is like, I think can get more people involved in the movement and get more people caring about this issue, because it seems like this is the one strange issue in America that you just don't care about until it happens to you.
Didn't start out that way. When your question was, what got us on this trail, this track, this particular thing that we're doing now with this tour? We started out by, after Columbine, it was a very long time before Aurora happened. 5 months after Aurora happened, Sandy Hook happened. A few months after that, other mass shootings started happening, and we started traveling then. So we would go to these sites personally, sometimes days after, depending on where we were and how long it took us to get there and whether we had to fly in or we drove. We have been to 18 public mass shootings.
Well, I love your approach and how you are so multi-pronged with grassroots organizations, but also with focusing on professional organizations. Why isn't the UFT out there lobbying? My big teachers unions all over. I've just joined a teacher advocacy gun violence prevention group. But doctors, lawyers, social workers, these are the people who, as you say, you know, are on the front lines dealing with these problems and see the survivorship of our whole country, that we're all survivors of gun violence. And these organizations also have clout in lobbying Congress. So
yes, they do. And it is, I think we, as a movement, we've kind of gotten locked into depending on each other to bounce ideas off of and to do events and all of the things that are important. But we haven't been real good about reaching out to others who we know are affected, and like teachers, like doctors. Now we're beginning to see a change, a shift, which is really good. Northwell in New York has gotten very involved in the gun violence prevention movement. We actually started a mindfulness class for survivors of gun violence with UCSD, University of California, San Diego. And we had people from all over the country that were able to go through the mindfulness classes with UCSD because of Zoom and because of COVID. So that part actually worked to our benefit. And we're starting another one this coming February, just in a couple of weeks, a new one starting. And this time we're hoping to have over 100 participants from all over the country, with the idea that they will continue on to the next class and become certified to become teachers and become violence preventers, violence interrupters and violence healers in their own communities. So it's a big challenge, and one that we're looking forward to, because we think we've seen the benefit of mindfulness in our community.